Okay, so hi everyone. So today we have Michael here, who has very graciously accepted to be part of this series, where we're interviewing founders, and specifically we're focused on trying to understand how they went from like 0 to 1 million in ARR, but the very specific tactics and go to market, and what worked, what didn't work, etc. Kind of like peeling a little bit behind the scenes on that. So, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time, and would love to a quick little introduction for those people who might not necessarily know you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for Xavier for having me on the podcast. It's an honor to be in your debut cohort
For
of
sure,
folks. I know we know
for
each other
sure.
for a bit, so excited for this. Yeah, my name is Michael. I'm the founder and the CEO of WorkOS, which is a software platform that helps make your app enterprise ready. That's what we say. So essentially, if you're building the next great whatever, next great SaaS that you're selling to businesses, at some point as you grow, you will start getting pulled up market, and there'll be a bunch of different features that those bigger customers will ask you for. It usually starts with SSO, enterprise authentication, signing in with enterprise identity systems, provisioning users from something like Skim for directory integration, access control, permissions, RBAC, logging, encryption. The list goes on and on. And so WorkOS is really a identity and security platform that helps you as a developer add all this stuff to your app. And practically speaking, it helps you make more money. So if you're at this kind of early product market fit, WorkOS is actually kind of like rocket boosters. It helps you grow your business faster and take down some bigger customers much sooner than you would. Certainly if you were going to build it yourself or grow slower. Um, this is a kind of an overnight success, classic of the business. We've been building it for 6.5 years. So some people have learned about us recently, but we've been at it for a while, powering a lot of different products people probably know. A lot of people listening to this have probably used products powered by WorkOS. Companies like Vercel, Netlify, Carta, Plaid, and then recently a bunch of AI companies. So we power auth and identity for ChatGPT Enterprise, Claude Enterprise, Perplexity Enterprise, Cursor. If you logged into Cursor, which probably most of your listeners have, you've logged in through WorkOS. That's our system. Jasper AI, AI 21, a bunch of other AI product companies that are out there. Even Cluey, which is getting a lot of press right now, they're powered by WorkOS. So really anything you're building, if you're building a B2B product and you're looking to grow, we're the platform for that.
That's awesome. Thank you for the intro. I love that since we met probably like I don't know, like I know at some event like maybe like a few years ago, and up until recently at dinner, like the introduction of WorkOS is like very consistent. It's always like very much like the same messaging. It's just like the customer list, gets more and more impressive over time, which I'm sure is like a huge point of pride for you and the whole team. So that's like WorkOS today. So my focus, because I know like a lot of the folks listening to this are going to be like earlier stage founders. My focus is to like dial the clock a little bit backwards and focus on those like first hand like sales conversations that you had. How did you find those folks? Like, were they part of like your network? And what was the pitch at that point? Like, was there a product involved? Like, just like take us back to those like initial like outbound sales conversations you had.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, it starts before we launched, so I spent about a year building this and starting to assemble an initial team before we launched anything. And our product is really for developers, people building apps, which is really my network. I knew a bunch of entrepreneurs and developers. I'm a software engineer myself. And so I went and called my friends, people that were working out and building companies. And specifically went and talked to the people on the enterprise features team and people who had built this in-house at these companies like Slack or Dropbox or Asana. So that's the first thing that gave me a lot of like product insight. And I think that was valuable in the sense that it gave me the messaging for how to talk about this. I knew sort of who the buyer would be inside these companies and the alternative and the pain that it would be if they didn't use WorkOS, the amount of months it would take, or bugs that they would have to fix, or in the case of Skim provisioning, SCIM. I talked to this guy at Slack, and they said, "Oh yeah, we call them internally the issues around it. We call them skimcidents." It was so
Wow.
painful they even had a name around it. And
Yeah.
so the first thing about doing the sales is really figuring out kind of like the storytelling of it, not just what the thing does, but why it's valuable and what value it brings to companies and what they do otherwise, what they would have to resort to otherwise. And that was pre-launch. We were going to launch the company actually at this conference called SaaStr. Jason Lemkin runs in 2020. And this little thing called COVID happened. And so it canceled SaaStr. shut down our launch plans. And instead, I just decided, screw it, we'll launch it through Hacker News and Twitter. And this is in literally March of 2020, March 17th of 2020. I just remember because March was insane. That was when everything was going to lockdown. And somehow, amidst everything happening in the world and this virus shutting down travel and airports and cities, people online were really excited about an API that helps you add SSO to your app and helps you think about SAML and these things. And we kind of initially had this idea market fit with folks. People were like, oh, this is such a great, tweets that were like, this is such a great idea. I hate building the stuff. I wish I had this in the past. And so early on, we had this like idea market fit, I would say, at the initial launch, which was really valuable. Following that launch, people signed up for early access. I did 70, I remember exactly 70 customer demos within 3 weeks, just back to back to back to back, chunk throughout the day, taking notes, recording them. And that was this initial broad set of feedback that really helped, again, refine the message and the pitch and the narrative. I would say the first few of those calls, I was not very good at explaining the product. By the end of it, I was pretty damn good, at explaining what WorkOS does.
Which is what we see now. It's like a super tight elevator pitch, pretty dialed in.
And now I've done it thousands of times, I'm sure.
For sure. And you test a little permutation here and there to see what hits and what doesn't
see what
resonate.
hits and adapt it for different audiences. And so at that point, there was a lot that I didn't know, but it was just repetition again. If you talk to people that are stand-up comics or read about comedy, they do the same thing where they'll go work on jokes at a comedy night where they're the crowd might be softer or they're not the headliner. If you've ever gone like in New York, the Comedy Cellar, which is a great place.
You'll have Comedy Club, any of these,
yeah. You'll have like Chris Rock will just show up. And just like, and might bomb, might try a bunch of stuff that doesn't work or mix it in. Usually they're good enough so they can bring it back. At the end, they'll have some.
And they have one or two main hits that always hit no matter what. So if they're bombing, they have to bring it back.
But they're trying new stuff. They're mixing things in, they're experimenting. And I think there's a lot of that as improvisational. Yeah, it's also with fundraising also, but especially as you're learning to sell, all the sales initially is to learn. It's to learn about your message. You need to listen and ask a lot of questions and do discovery. It's not just telling people things. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should be listening more than you're talking.
For sure.
And I would say like the first, easily the first $1 million in revenue, probably the first 10 million in revenue that we had was just selling to learn what customers need in the market and adapting to that. So that was really exciting. We didn't sell a single dollar of product until later that year in the fall, early winter, from that launch in the spring. We just built more stuff throughout the summer, got feedback, iterated on the product. And so again, the kind of overnight success, it took us,
for sure.
I think it was 2 years from closing the seed round until we had our first dollar of revenue, which,
wow.
Is kind of nuts, but I think it's often what it takes when you're building hard infrastructure for eventually enterprise.
100%. And as you said, kind of like at the end of the day, what matters is like making sure that idea, product / market fit is like really, really tight. So then you can kind of like pour fuel on the fire. Like just like double clicking there and like being super practical and pragmatic. So it sounds like your mix between inbound and outbound was mostly just like putting content out there, doing launches, and then letting the demos come in? Or like, how did you think about that as a founder tactically, when it came to kind of like, oh my God, how am I going to drive leads? How am I going to get people, kind of like in the door to have those discovery conversations, that you were mentioning?
Yeah. I think the reality is early on, it's not very legible. So any company or any founder that says, this is the thing that we did that allowed us to scale, this is the thing that happened, it's only in hindsight that makes sense. You can kind of connect the dots. So early on, we did everything. We tried everything we can, and we still do it. Like I literally had a conversation this morning with our marketing team where we were talking about some projects that we're looking at doing. And one person was like, oh, we already tried that. That doesn't work. And I was like, but it's been a year since we tried that. Our business is different. Our customers are different. The market is different. Stuff's just ripping in the AI world. Like, we should probably try it again. Like, our priors, we need to update. The world is a different place. And so I think early on, what you should really do is run just a ton of experiments. Everything you can try and everything you think might have a future of it. The challenging thing is like, in order for things to work, it takes consistency. And especially if you're selling like an infrastructure developer product, there's just this like showing up every day for a long period of time That really is actually what drives the reputation and brand and value of the product. And so there are people today that use the product now that migrate to it, that adopt it, that met me years ago at stuff that we did, or got emails from me years ago, or saw our
I know
launch
we're
years
probably
ago.
one of those. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where
Exactly. You're a great,
like talk about
great
long
example of
sales
that.
cycle there, you know?
Yeah. And
Of
so
like eventually you'll get them.
yeah, and like I don't know if you're tracked in our CRM or something somewhere. Probably not. That's usually
Yeah,
for people when they're integrating and kind of moving through. It's like a short time interval. But I
yeah,
think if you're, especially if you're building a platform, where you're going to support people for long periods of time, you should sort of be like long-term greedy. Like for
for
me, it's
sure.
not important to win over a short amount of time. I want to win over a long period of time, be really durable. So that's a big difference. But early on, it's very manual. Like the do things that don't scale, you would not believe still to this day how many things we do that are things that supposedly don't scale. Um, and things that other people have told me wouldn't work, or that wouldn't work at scale, or that there's no way you can do X, Y, Z. And you find what works and dig in. So I would say there's no recipe for it, but it's the typical things around run experiments, have the founder be involved, and just be sort of relentless about it.
For the sake of the audience, I'll just like push a little there because I know you've shared with me like over dinner some like really interesting, fun stories of like like go to market experiments that have worked very very well, and some that might have not worked as well. Any like fond memories of things that you're like I would have no idea that that would have worked really well, and it was like very successful from a go to market perspective, and things that you thought like oh my god this is gonna be our channel and it has not panned out at least yet, you know?
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. Let's think of some examples. Uh, well, one thing that didn't work early on was like direct cold emails. I think getting an
Yeah,
email
right.
that like you need an SSO API didn't work at all. Just to companies that were, people delete that, startups and
Yeah.
founders. So that didn't work. What we did find work well was actually going through investors, getting introductions to like the technical leadership or founders of a company for a relationship, longer term like relationship building. So we
Right.
met at some dinner, I think by some VC at some point but we run into each
For
other, things
sure.
like that here and there. We regularly still use those networks to ask for intros. Even investors that haven't invested in WorkOS, I'll ask them, hey, can you introduce me to this person in your portfolio? I think I can help make them more money. I think I can help them
Right.
grow their business more, and I think we'd be a great fit. Here's why. Here's this thing. I host a lot of actually like kind of small gatherings, like dinners. I do it at least like once a month on kind of like a repeating cadence with different founders, and sometimes they're technology leaders, VP of Eng, CTO. Sometimes they're CEOs. Sometimes they're product leaders. Sometimes there's designers. That's always really fun. Sometimes sales leaders. That's always a blast too. They're like kind of rowdy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to kind
Different
of
audience.
connect. Yeah, just to kind of connect and get involved. I'm angel investing in companies, and that brings us customers. It's like the whole flywheel, together. So again, I don't think it's like one specific thing. One thing that I've been surprised by how well we have a billboard in SF. It's on
Right.
Highway
You were
101.
telling me about this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like right in Soma. So if you like get on the highway and drive to the airport or something like that, it's right there. And we did we have one that's there right now, but we did it a year and a half ago for the first time as an experiment. And I talked to the Clear Channel guys and got our team to do the design work and all this stuff. And I was like, I have no idea. I was pretty nervous about it, because like I feel like billboards are kind of like the harbinger of death for startups. Like when you when you
Right.
start doing it, like the old advice was always like, if you have to do that, your product
Yeah.
sucks.
It's like
You
Hiram
know,
McKenzie. You know, it's
yeah,
like
it's like
yeah.
you're screwed. You're screwed, man. Like
Yeah.
those guys are gonna die.
That's it. Wrap it up.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, but like we're an enterprise infrastructure company and I want this brand awareness, and we have like pretty large size contracts for companies, and I just thought it'd be important for us to stand out. So we had done some events, dinners, and sponsored conferences, and I was like, let me just do it as an experiment for a couple months, 2 or 3 months. And I cannot tell you how many people texted me when that went up, and people that were prospects, people that I knew, people that other founders that were like, hey, I saw the WorkOS billboard. Like, it sounds like you guys are doing well and growing. We should check out, whether we should use it this year at some point. So it wasn't an immediate transaction. No one, I hope,
Right.
is like driving down the highway and opens it up on their phone and is like, sign up for WorkOS, when they're doing
Right. Right.
70 miles an hour down I-80. But it just had this like repetition, and it combined with all these other things that we did to create this like brand presence and awareness. Now, we don't have billboards all over the city. We didn't put them on bus stop ads or buses. We didn't put them at the airport. We don't have them in New York, LA, Madrid, Sao
Right.
Paulo, London. We only have one billboard in the entire world, and it is right in the middle of San Francisco. And so I think it's still a specific bet. It's a concentration for our customer base and for our
For sure.
specific product. So I'm not, depends on your product, who you're selling to, what's going on, but that's been a thing too. Another example, not something we did that I saw recently, is Hex. So Hex that's actually one of our customers. I know Barry and Caitlin, really cool data analytics product, growing and doing well. They layer stuff on top of Snowflake. Like you can use Snowflake data and build data stuff. And so during the Snowflake Summit, they actually built this like cool outdoor coffee stand that was kind of close to Moscone and had it branded and this big thing. And so you could go get a coffee and meet with them during that. It's kind of a way to ride the tailwind of that event or draft alongside them. So I think there's interesting stuff like you can do in that way where maybe you're not spending that extreme, but it's a little bit more creative
Right.
and you can get that brand association. You need to be willing to invest in those long-term relationships, though. That's the thing I would say. Like, if you expect there to be an immediate transactional event where, like, hey, we sponsored this conference and this exact number of leads, we're going to immediately convert the next day. The reality is within enterprise, the sales cycles are a bit longer. The relationships are longer building. You have to show consistency. And so it's not
And
as directly attributable in the same way.
100%. And I know you remember, I remember you mentioning how, and I think this is true for a lot of us, where the buyer might not be ready at that moment to integrate,
Yeah, that's right.
SSO or whatever, it
Very
might
unlikely
be.
they are.
Very
Extremely
unlikely.
unlikely.
It's more likely than
Like,
not, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah, but you have to
very
be kind of
rare
like
that we
top of
talk to
mind.
somebody and they're like, "Oh, it's so cool! Like I was gonna integrate SSO this week."
Right.
Almost never happens.
Yeah,
Almost
yeah.
never. It's like vanishingly rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
If
always like, "Oh
anything,
yeah,
you
it's
are
been
the
on the
perfect example
roadmap.
of that, which
Oh
is
yeah, we
like,
need to do that." Or a lot of times we get migrations. People say, "Ah, I've been meaning to move off of this thing," or "I signed a contract with this other vendor," or we know we need to scale, or we started off on this one auth system that was kind of built for hobby projects and getting started, and now that we're really growing, we actually need something that's going to scale with us to enterprise. We should look at using WorkOS now. That happens all the time. OpenAI migrated to WorkOS from Auth0. So did Cursor, actually. They were using Auth0 and migrated to WorkOS. So we don't often start on them. There's actually some transition moment that occurs.
could you share a little bit more? Because I know, again, I've had the benefit of listening to this, but I know the audience might have not. Could you talk a little bit about how I think the cursor example might have been a really good one, where you have now like a bit of a suite of products, and folks might like start with like one product and then sort of like go from there. Was that always the situation, or like is this something that you've just benefit from like compounding? Because I could imagine at the beginning you did not have like multi-product sort of like suite. But yeah, we'd love to just like hear a little bit more about that because I think it's like really, really helpful, especially like in the early days. Like, how was that conversation?
Sure, yeah. So if you go back to our launch and like the Hacker News, launch, there were 4 features that we announced. Single sign-on, SSO, SAML, directory sync, which is SCIM, audit logs, so like logging, activity trail, and role-based access control, RBAC. And we'd actually built the first 3. We had working versions of the first thing. RBAC, I was like, I know we need this. I kind of know what it's going to take to build it. I know the shape, so I'm going to put it on the page, but we're not ready there yet. And we launched with all of those. And what's kind of crazy is I had this tweet from, I'll try to pull this up, this one pager that I had written before we launched. It was something that I had put together just to show to initial customers, just as like like here's what we're all about. We haven't launched yet, but try it. And if you go
For
back and
sure.
look at that document, you can link it in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah, I will. I will. I
It's
will. Yeah.
it's like identical to what we're doing today. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So I
Yeah.
kind of got lucky, I converged on this thing. So we launched, we roll this stuff out. We're a multi-product company from day one, and I do all these demos. And I ask people like, what do you want to use? What do you want to pay for? And they're like, oh, we want single sign-on. And so I'm like, okay, well, should we be the single sign-on company? No, should we be SSO OS or like whatever,
Yeah.
or Auth OS or something? And they're like, no, 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 I need all that other stuff. I know I'm going to need all of it. I just need SSO first. Right? That's just the immediate need that I have today. And so from that, we were able to actually refine and say, okay, we're just going to go really deep for the next 6 months on solving SSO deeply as a feature with the knowledge that we'll expand from there into the wider platform, but that we need to nail for the initial set of customers. And we built something called the WorkOS admin portal at that time, which is the setup and configuration experience for SSO. And it's this like magical thing. It's kind of like Stripe checkout, on the payment side, but it's that for like enterprise IT. And if you go look at like OpenAI and Anthropic's help docs, you'll see our product screenshots of it. That's how
That's
much
so
it's
cool.
used. Yeah, and so we
Yeah,
built that. That let us go deep. And so it's kind of this exercise in constantly going deep on something and then surfacing and going broad again, and then going deep and then broad again. And the balance of how to navigate that, I think, is just ultimately a judgment call and a hard thing that founders need to figure out for the business. Because you don't want to be spread too thin. You won't be able to build anything. But if you only go broad and deep, or if you only go deep in one specific thing, you might lose out on the platform opportunity and building around the adjacencies. And so I've learned a lot about that. That was 5 years ago.
for
Uh,
sure.
so I've learned a lot since then.
Again, only in hindsight you can articulate it very well and very cleanly, like going, wide and
Yeah,
deep and all that stuff,
totally. Yeah, and
Makes
at
it
the
like
time,
really nice
it's like
package. The time you're freaking
that's
out, probably like, oh my God, I have to like figure this out.
totally. And you don't really know like what's the right packaging, or what's the right pricing, or like what's the right way to support customers. Just like all this stuff is just like not just like totally not clear to you, totally illegible. And then over time you see patterns and see things that like have consistency, and you're like, oh, that's how to talk about it. But I would say that the reason, if there was a reason why I had that set of features that was kind of a bullseye initially, was that what I was articulating there was like a pain in the market and not just our solution. So I had spent, a year or two talking to people in IT and talking to people that built like stuff in SaaS and people who had already done this. And I kind of coalesced all of that. I gave this talk. This is before we launched also at SaaS school, I think is what it was called. And it was called Crossing the Enterprise Chasm. And it became the name of the podcast I've started and all this stuff. But I literally made this talk like the week before. I practiced it the night of. If you go watch the video, I'm like kind of dreary-eyed and everything. But it was kind of the thesis. I was like, this is just a problem I've seen in the world articulated. And I think the more that you can actually frame your company around the problem articulation versus your solution, that's more durable. Problems rarely immediately evaporate or
Change.
go away. They rarely change. It's the same problem. But the way you solve it, you need to be flexible on that, because your first shot isn't going to be right. The first
Right.
lines of code we built at WorkOS was audit logging.
Yeah.
So I was wrong, right? It was
Yeah.
actually the SSO stuff that people wanted first. Thank goodness we were able to adapt to that and be flexible on that. If we had spent, 4 years building audit logging before shipping anything or listening to users, we would be stuck. We would have shut it down. And so we still have that mentality today around new things that we build, listening, we're trying to listen more than we speak.
For sure. And I know that you've also kind of like shared with me a little bit about how like you think about staffing new experiments and new products with like small teams and kind of like going through that as you guys like scale, which is like super, super cool. So, okay, so you guys launch on Hacker News, launch ish, try it via Saster.
Yeah. So that's just great too. I wish we would have done it. Jason's a friend, and yeah, it's a great conference. But
No, I
yeah,
mean
yeah.
I've heard like I've seen like the videos of how like what a horror story it was. Like I cannot imagine like a worse business to be in, like in March 2020, and then in-person conferences. But it is what it is. Okay, so you guys launch, it gets some buzz, it gets some traction. Walk me through like the 3 to 6 months after that. Like you guys are not monetizing yet. Like what's going through your head? Like you're like just is it like let's just
Sure.
like drive usage and installs or like
Well, after I launched, yeah, there was this period of time where I was looking at the macroeconomic climate and I was seeing it crash. And funny enough, in my freshman year in college, I had actually taken a seminar class all about pandemic flu and the Spanish
You're like,
flu,
when would this
100
come in
years
handy?
ago. Yeah, and like
And,
how to
and the
prepare
bubonic
the
plague or
university for
whatever.
it, and how fast it would spread, and like how many
That's
people it
so
would kill,
funny.
and like anticipate. So this happened, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to be 6 weeks," and I was like,
You're like,
"No
nope.
way, no way." I was like, "It's going to be 2 years. It's going to be 2 years." And
That's
so
so
I see
funny.
the economy start crashing, and at the time we had like 6 months of cash or something like that, from our
Oh
seed
wow.
round. We were at like month 15 or something from our seed round. So, year and a half, 2 years of cash from the seed round. And I was like, I got to go raise money because I got to raise it before we bottom out and the total global economy collapses. Had no idea that 2020 was going to be like ripping, online
Right.
software and everything. So I actually switched gears and I raised our Series A totally over Zoom. Many of these firms had never even done fundraising over Zoom with no revenue in May and June. And so that was kind of like early summer. June, July, August, built more product, talked to those customers, started rolling it out, going deep on admin portal, getting those features. And then by the end of the year, I was like, I think we kind of have the commercial offering started ready to go for SSO. And I started doing more outreach, more confident outreach to companies I thought could be more established to use it. Early on, I was like random startups, small companies. People were kind of low stakes and they would give feedback. But then I was like, I think I'm ready for a little bit more big leagues. And I remember one of our first kind of lighthouse marquee customers was Webflow. So Webflow at the time was like a few million in revenue, I mean 5 million in revenue or something like that. And I'd seen the product, looked cool. And Bryant, the CTO, I literally had come across a help support page, somebody saying, hey, I want SSO for Webflow on their help doc. And somebody from Webflow responded, oh, it's on our roadmap. We don't have it yet today. So I took a screenshot of it and took the link. And I just sent an email to Bryant. I said, hey, we haven't met. I'm from the startup. We make it really easy to add SSO to your app. It's just an OAuth API. Here's a link to the docs. Let me know what you think. Like, we'd love to help you. I like your product. And I think he sent it to him like on a Thursday. I think he opened it on a Friday. And he's like, oh, it looks cool. I made him an account on our system. It was invite only. I was like, you have an account, you can log in, go check it out.
Right. So no friction.
Saturday, Sunday, he like writes the code and does the integration for Webflow. Monday morning, he goes back to his team and he's like, hey guys, I built SSO using this WorkOS thing. And like went live with it and started adding customers. And it was this kind of like magic end to end, like, oh, I can actually like sell this. We just starting to figure out our pricing and how to scale and our packaging. But Webflow ended up being they still are a customer of ours, an amazing partner. We've worked with a bunch of different product from them and many different people on their team, over the years. And that was like, I would say the first thing where I said, okay, can I reproduce that? Can I go after more companies that, Webflow already had login, they just didn't have SSO. They already had some auth, but they were starting to go up market. And I was like, companies like this that have they're at maybe a few $1 million in revenue, but they really are ready to accelerate, post product market fit, ready to scale. I think I can help them. And so, about 6 months later that year, I was like DMing Guillermo from Vercel. And I was like, hey, you guys have like GitHub login and Magic Link stuff, but you got to add SSO. SSO is the thing, it's the thing everybody wants. And he's like, oh, I don't know, we'll plug this thing in. I was like, look, here's the docs. Just go do it. Just go plug it in. So, send them a shared Slack channel. Some engineer plugs it in and boom, Vercel is live. And then they find a ton of bugs. I remember summer of 21, we had this moment in time where, their team is amazing, super like precise, high taste, really great, amazing feedback. I'm just like so grateful to them. Evil Rabbit, Nicholas, the designer, sending us a bunch of stuff. He's a big fan of his. And we even called it Vercel driven development. Kind of like test driven development for that summer. Cause like anytime they would send us a bug report, we would like drop everything. We'd be like, we should just go fix that. That's like such a good suggestion or piece of feedback. So it's finding customers. I think it's not just any customer. It's not the dollars that matter. You want to find the customers to help sharpen your blade. The ones that'll give you the right type of feedback, that'll know about what the right product experience is and the right nuance. And if you think about both Webflow and Vercel, both are actually infrastructure companies. They do web hosting, to different types of doing it. But they're
quite literally,
web scale. They're not dummies. They're really, really smart engineers. And Vercel in particular is like one of the best engineering teams I'd interacted with. I was like, man, these guys are sharp. If you can get customers like that to use your product and give you feedback, it'll make you better. Sometimes it's painful at times. They'll call you out on stuff that should be definitely better. But it gives you the opportunity to make it better. And if you can, I feel like if you can satisfy them, it gives you the opportunity for the next one. So then, from there we got, companies like Carta and then Plaid and, kept scaling, and Modern Treasury started using WorkOS. And
was this just like you like trying to find some GitHub issue, and just like send them screenshots? Like, was this like very manually like you
sometimes
doing
it's
that outbound?
Sometimes it's like, okay, these guys just raised money. I think they might need this in a few months. Sometimes it's like, oh, it looks like they're using this other thing. I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. And you don't make all the shots you take for sure. But it's just this like constant going out and driving the company forward. I think the idea that you build this like content engine or this inbound pipeline, and for an infrastructure company that just like people come to you, I just don't think it actually is real. And it's not real for infrastructure companies. It's this magical, mythical thing. What I also realized is it's not a great customer experience. Like WorkOS is really complicated. It's a really complicated thing. It's like, I talk about the SAML edge cases and stuff. WorkOS is like made of edges. The whole thing is edges. It's like edge case. It's like a ball of sharp edges, you know.
Yeah.
And so you gotta like know how to use it in a very specific way. Our APIs are really clean and very easy to integrate with. But just integrating with legacy and existing enterprise proprietary IT systems is complicated. And so the ideal customer experience actually isn't one where it's just like, here's the docs, go with God. It's
Yeah.
actually deeply involved in them, where you're connected to them, where you support. We have thousands of Slack channels set up with other companies. We've built a ton of stuff on top of it. We built a whole custom like Slack support machine early on because we were like, this is the experience that we think is the best for customers, and it actually will help them succeed and integrate. That doing things that don't scale is like absolutely true to deliver the extreme type of experience that you want for folks. But I don't necessarily think it gets easier over time. I think you just like learn more and more tricks, but you're always experimenting and always trying to find the new
The new
channel.
edge. You gotta find that alpha wherever it is, even if it's like a
Totally. I
little
mean, our
bit.
thing right now, we did this a few months ago. We hosted MCP night
Yeah,
at the
huge
Exploratorium.
success.
It's crazy,
Huge.
crazy. I just
Line
tweeted
out
this
the
thing.
door. Yeah,
Line down the block. I thought we were gonna have 100 people come, maybe max. We had 500 people show up. We had all these demos, through this big party. We're doing
people
it
were talking
again
about
in
it afterwards.
August.
I was at
Totally.
some other
Yeah.
event and people were like, "Yeah, like there was this like MCP night." I was like, "Oh my god, did Michael crush on this one?" And
It's
like
wild. It was totally
talk
an
about capturing
experiment.
the zeitgeist.
Yeah, yeah. It was a blast. Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna do that again. That was so fun. To
Yeah,
bring people together, like building out the forefront of MCP. And I don't know where MCP is going. I just think it's cool. We're building a bunch of stuff. We built a thing that brings auth to MCP, so you can really
yeah,
easily add identity to your MCP's remote server. Um, just try stuff,
for
like
sure.
out there doing things, trying to see what works, and sometimes, consistently surprise ourselves.
That's the lesson, folks. Try stuff, see what's out there. Also, like add to the show notes whatever is the latest event. I know I saw you're doing like some like dev tool drinking thing, like little mingling thing, which I know you do regularly with a badge. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll add the latest one because like I always get I always get the Partiful like or the Luma links for that
Yeah, man.
stuff, which is
I mean,
it's
I'm
always
I'm
fun.
going and giving a talk tonight at the AI Tinkerers event, which is like this really awesome, meetup. Dex from Human Layer helps organize
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and Paul from Browser Base, he used to put it together. That's where I met Paul. I was like, go to this thing and see people show off stuff, and I was like, what's
Next
this
thing you know,
browser based
MCP
thing? And
night is like
yeah, and
is like
I don't know.
ripping.
It's like part of this is sales. You could say like, oh, you're doing this to go sell product, meet people, in the ecosystem, partner with them. But it's also just like that's the reason I live in San Francisco. It's like the reason I moved here. It's the thing I'm all about. Is I just
Same.
like working with engineers and building stuff. It's where I drive creativity from. It's what I want to learn about next. And so I think that's like, if you're not the type of person that likes meeting developers, like it's something I often tell entrepreneurs is like, make sure you really like your customers, whatever product you're building. If you don't like doctors, if you're like, I hate going to the doctors, don't build a product for doctors. You're going to have to spend all this time talking to doctors. If you don't like lawyers, if you're like, lawyers are all scumbags and I can't stand
Don't
them,
Bill
don't
Harvey.
build for lawyers. Don't build Harvey. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. You're setting yourself up for just like a world of hurt. But if you're like, yeah, my mom and dad were lawyers. I hung out with a bunch of lawyers as a kid. I thought about being a lawyer, but I actually got into software and I really like software. I know a bunch of lawyers and kind of grew up around a household of, legal world. You might be perfect for building it. You might be actually like in your element in that way. And for me, that's like developers. It's like other people building stuff. It's in many ways like one of the hardest things is to sell product to developers, sell technology to technology people. It's kind of like a joke sometimes. It's kind of like selling ice to Eskimos. It's like
100%. Or water
it's
to a
like really
dolphin.
hard.
Yeah,
Water to a
yeah,
dolphin. Yeah, exactly. Like to a fish. You're like, this has got to be really good
yeah.
water. But I find it
I
really
mean,
satisfying and it's inspiring. To have those people kind of in my orbit.
for sure. No, no, that's awesome. I know we're coming up here onto like at the end of this thing. But so okay, I have a few more like questions to like wrap us up, and then I'll let you kind of like plug in any MCP nights or any other like events that you might have like going around depending
Yeah.
when this comes out. But a few things. So like I think we got a pretty good story of like WorkOS and those like first months and like the mix of how like messy it was At what point did you decide, okay, I feel ready, as you said, like time to turn on pricing? I know it's like a lot of it was like usage based, so how, like would love to hear a little bit more about that. And at what point did you say like, okay, I cannot be the only one doing sales. I need to bring someone on board. Like, what did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I still do a lot of our sales, and I think
I
part of
know.
it is,
That's what I'm
yeah, and I
saying.
think, yeah, and I think part of it is like I really like our customers, and people like buying from the CEO. I had this experience with this is like a couple years ago with my board. I have great investors, and one of my investors is Green Oaks Capital, which is kind of more in the news recently, but
Yeah,
they
the
invested in WorkOS like
windsurf.
3.5 years ago. Yeah, they're in windsurf,
Yeah, yeah.
rippling. And I had this meeting with them. This is like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, I don't know if I can do sales or scale the sales team. I don't. It's like I'm the engineer, product guy. We always get a sales guy comes in and does it. And I was like, we need to hire a head of sales. They listen and they're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense, and that's a good recruiting firm to use and whatever. And one of them sat me down. Neil was like, he's like, you're going to be able to do sales better than anybody you're going to be able to hire. And at the time, like what I heard to that was like, I won't be able to hire anyone good at doing sales.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like the way I internalized it. But that actually wasn't what he meant. What I realized later is what he meant is like, you will be able to sell the product in a way that nobody else will be able to. You'll actually be better at it for the customers. And he essentially said, like, we invest in the company because we think you're going to be just like the killer at this. Like, you're going to be able, you have to be a technical sale. You have to understand the product deeply. You have to understand infrastructure and ecosystems and connect these dots. And to sell to like, an engineering leader at like a OpenAI, or Perplexity, they're really smart. You got to be able to like go head to head with them, some days.
Yeah.
And so what I realized actually at some point was like I could get good at it, and then it would be really fun. And so I do a lot of it myself. I have an amazing team that supports this though, and a lot of people on our team that go and do sales as well. Our support team is selling, solutions engineer team is selling, our account executives and SDRs are selling. It's not just me, anymore. But the first version that we built was actually supporting me going out and doing it, how to do follow-ups, how to think about following up around documents and pricing and procurement. And I would get progressively less and less and less part of the process to now where, there's deals that close without me. There's deals where I kind of jump in, and kind of
Right.
help
They
convert them
just
at
roll
the
you
end and talk
out
to
at the
them.
end for the final
Yeah.
thing.
Usually it's more in the beginning because I'm pretty good at doing discovery and talking about their product. It's less of a
Oh,
put a
interesting.
ribbon on it and more about like understanding where their business is and where it's growing. And I can kind of jump between the like technical architect mind and also the business mind. I kind of have both
Right.
sides of my brain in that way.
And probably gets them bought in, right? Like to whomever the
Yeah.
champion
And
is
I'm
for
like, oh,
you,
and then I can say stuff, that salespeople typically I can make promises or say stuff about the product and kind of
Right,
and
right,
kind of
right,
cheat.
right,
I can cheat, I can do things that they can't do.
right. Yeah,
Um, and so, for us, but what we've realized is our product is it's obvious, it's so technical. It's a technical consultative sale. We actually need to bring solutions engineers and technical people into those conversations to build credibility, to get the technical win, to just show people like, hey, this is why this is going to be the best fit for you. Like nobody buys WorkOS by accident. Nobody's like,
for
oh, I
sure,
just
for sure.
happened upon it and I don't know, and now I'm using it. No, it's always an intentional reason
Purchase.
why. And
Yeah,
our customers are really smart. They're really, really smart. They think through it deeply. They understand the trade-offs,
they've
and
tried other
usually
things.
try other things. And then it's a big investment, not just like in terms of paying us. It's not cheap, but doing a migration, you're going to put engineering work on it. It can't be a lateral move. They got to be able to get a big, big, big outcome from it, and have a big impact. And so sales at WorkOS is just really, really hard, but it's really satisfying when it works because you get to go sell to these like amazing companies, and sell big deals and make a lot of money and grow and scale. Our sales team's like pretty happy and
For
powering along.
sure.
So yeah,
One thing for the audience that might be listening to this, I think one of you can see Michael's smile every time you mention a company at a dinner or something, and he's like, "Oh, yep, they're a customer."
yeah, yeah.
It happens increasingly more and more, I bet. And I know that he's done it like a few times every time I've gotten the chance to like see him in person, and I'm sure that's probably like the best feeling, honestly, right? Like ever as a
It's the
founder,
second best thing to like working at OpenAI is to getting them as a customer, so I can just
a
see
hundred
them
percent
a little sliver, be part of their team, and just have a tiny tiny piece of how we help them succeed,
for
and to
sure.
do that across that and Cursor and Perplexity and like Vercel, I've gotten to build relationships and friends there. Their CTO of Malta, run into him in parties and love chatting with him. Lindsay, the VP of engineering, or Lee Robb, or folks like that. And so I think my favorite thing is like our customers that we get to sell to. Like I was saying earlier, in that audience, these growth stage companies innovating like at the forefront of it. Recently, it's been a lot of these vibe coding platforms. Where SourceGraph's new thing, AMP is like using WorkOS, StackBlitz, doing stuff with them. We're talking a bunch of the other ones you might imagine. Replit's using WorkOS, and so I just kind of get a peer into the state of the current future and
For sure.
meet them a little
See,
bit.
it's
I'm
like
like,
being an
Amjad, I'm
investor,
your
but
I'm your SAML
yeah,
guy. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
totally,
yeah,
yeah. Well, it's funny.
and
I angel invest in some of the companies occasionally. Some of our
yeah,
customers like Incident.io, great product for incident
yeah,
management. We use it. I met those guys years ago. We started using it, and I was like, hey, can I like invest a little bit? And I invested more in the Series A and a bunch more in the Series B. They use WorkOS, we use Incident. It's this weird like kind of friend, but also professional, but also investor, and
right, right,
um, it's just what a delight to be able to do that, and such a special thing to be able to work with people like that in Silicon Valley. I feel there's so few industries where you can have that type of like interaction and relationship with those folks, and so yeah, it's absolutely it's absolutely thrilling. I feel like we're an enterprise infrastructure company building all this IT stuff, but for
for
some
sure.
reason we're in the middle of all the AI companies. We're like
Uh,
I feel like
you
we're the only vendor that these guys buy other than NVIDIA, the only shared vendor. You know, they
That's
buy
probably
from
true.
WorkOS, NVIDIA, and a bunch of other random stuff. It's just wild. So I didn't expect that, but that's the thing with platforms is if you build it in a generic, powerful enough way, people will surprise you what they build on it. And if you just build really good building blocks for people, they can take it and grow and scale and go to the moon. Go from nothing to 500 million in revenue in a
I
year.
know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, I feel like that's a great positive note to end it on. Totally not planned, actually, but I think that was like the perfect thing. Just to like wrap it up, anything that you would like folks out there to kind of like know? Obviously, like WorkOS, I'm assuming you're hiring, but anything else that could be relevant for the audience?
Yeah, we're
Also,
hiring
obviously,
everywhere. Tons of engineers. We're hiring a lot of infrastructure engineers, product engineers, ex-founders, salespeople, engineers that want to turn into salespeople. Those people do really well at WorkOS. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
they
I
do
can
super,
imagine.
super well. Yeah, it's a blast. We also do like a ton of events. I do drink ups, we do meetups at different offices. MCP Night 2.0 is coming.
It's coming.
I don't know when this is going to land, this podcast, but we're going to announce it pretty
We'll
soon.
coordinate, yeah, yeah,
Um,
to figure out what
Honestly, like
we'll add
the best
the latest one whenever these
the best
launches.
place is just like my Twitter. You can go figure out what I'm doing this week and what's coming up and RSVP to it.
Amazing,
But um,
amazing.
yeah, if you're listening to this and you're in the Bay Area, you should definitely come to one of our things. It's like we get a pretty good group of people to come together, and MCP Night was just a blast. I mean, there were people from like Sentry and Vercel, Cloudflare, and Netlify, and this next one I think is going to be. We got a bunch of special stuff in store. It's going to be even bigger and better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. We'll add everything down on the show notes, and we're also gonna clip this because, of course, welcome to 2025. So we're gonna
Absolutely.
splice it in like a bunch of different ways. But yeah, dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, and congrats on the podcast. Can't wait to hear about all the other great guests you'll have having. Take
Awesome.
care.
Thank you so much, man. Bye.